I was sitting in my favorite coffee shop, scrolling through my phone, when my best friend Keisha slid into the seat across from me. Her face was pale. "Naomi," she whispered, her hands shaking as she placed her iPad on the table between us. "Have you seen this?" I looked down at the screen. It was Forbes magazine's latest digital cover, and there, in a perfectly tailored Tom Ford suit, was my husband Marcus. The headline screamed in bold letters, "From nothing to 50 million. The self-made empire of Marcus Reynolds." My coffee cup froze halfway to my lips. Self-made. My grandmother's $5 million flashed through my mind. The $5 million I had handed him 10 years ago. The $5 million he used to build every single brick of that empire. In the interview, Marcus was quoted saying, "I started with absolutely nothing. No family money, no investors, just my vision and relentless hard work. I pulled myself up by my bootstraps." I stared at those words until they blurred. Started with nothing. My hands began to tremble, not from fear, but from something much more dangerous, the kind of cold fury that calculates instead of explodes. Hey everyone, I'm so glad you're here with me today. Before we dive deep into this story of betrayal, ambition, and ultimate justice, I need you to do something for me. If you haven't already, please hit that like button right now. It helps the story reach more people who need to hear it. And subscribe so you don't miss what happens next, because trust me, this story has more twists than you can imagine. Now, let's do a quick roll call. I want to know where my beautiful community is watching from today. Drop your city, your country, and the word present in the comments below. I love seeing how far these stories travel. Let's build this community together. Alright, let's get back to Naomi's story. Because what Marcus didn't know, what he would soon discover in the most painful way possible, was that the woman he dismissed, the woman whose money built his throne, was about to take everything back. And I mean everything. 10 years earlier, my world had looked very different. I was 28 years old, sitting in a lawyer's office in downtown Chicago, still wearing the black dress from my grandmother's funeral. Grief sat heavy in my chest, but it was mixed with something else. Shock. "Miss Harrison," the estate attorney said, sliding a folder across his mahogany desk. "Your grandmother's estate has been settled. After taxes and executor fees, you are inheriting approximately $5 million. $5 million. I sat there, stunned. I knew Grandma Rose had been comfortable. She owned her brownstone in Hyde Park outright, and she'd been careful with money her whole life. But $5 million? That was generational wealth. That was freedom. That was everything she'd worked for her entire life. Hand it to me." "She left you a letter," the attorney added, handing me a cream envelope with my name written in Grandma Rose's elegant cursive. I waited until I was alone in my car before opening it. My hands shook as I unfolded the heavy stationery. "My dearest Naomi, if you're reading this, I'm gone. But my love for you remains. This money represents 70 years of my life, of hard work, of sacrifices, of saying no to things I wanted so I could say yes to building something lasting. I'm giving this to you not so you can spend it, but so you can grow it. Invest it wisely. Build something that matters. And most importantly, protect it. Money changes people, sweetheart. Make sure whoever you share your life with loves you, not what you can give them. I love you always." Grandma Rose cried in that car for 20 minutes, clutching that letter. I should have listened to her warning. I should have heard what she was really saying. But I was young, I was in love, and I thought I knew better. Marcus and I had been dating for 2 years when Grandma Rose passed. He was 31, charming, ambitious, and full of dreams. He worked in business development for a mid-sized consulting firm, but his real passion was entrepreneurship. He had notebooks full of ideas, business plans sketched on napkins, energy that never quit. "I just need capital, Naomi," he'd say, his eyes bright with possibility. "I have the vision, the connections, the work ethic. I just need the resources to make it happen." 2 weeks after I inherited the money, Marcus proposed. We were at Navy Pier, watching the sunset over Lake Michigan, when he got down on one knee. "Naomi Harrison," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "you are the love of my life. You see me not just who I am now, but who I'm going to be. Will you marry me?" I said yes. Of course I said yes. We got married 3 months later in a small ceremony at the Chicago Botanic Garden. It was perfect. He was perfect. I was so happy I felt like I was floating on our honeymoon in Jamaica. Lying on the beach under the stars, Marcus turned to me with that vulnerable look he sometimes got. "Babe, I need to talk to you about something serious." "What's wrong?" I asked, immediately concerned. "Nothing's wrong. It's just I've been refining my business plan. The logistics platform I told you about. I really think it could work. But I need startup capital. Real capital." He paused, seeming nervous. "How much?" I asked. $3 million. Maybe 3.5 to be safe. "I know it's a lot. I'll give you 5. I said. Marcus sat up, staring at me. Naomi, I can't ask you to, you're not asking. I'm offering. We're married now. Your dreams are my dreams. Let's build this together. I can still remember the way he looked at me in that moment like I had hung the moon. He kissed me so hard we fell back onto the sand, laughing. I'm going to make you so proud. He whispered against my hair. I promise you, Naomi, I'm going to build something amazing. For us, for our future. I believed him. God help me, I believed every word. Asterisk, but what I didn't know, what I wouldn't discover for another 10 years, was that the paperwork Marcus had me sign wasn't a partnership agreement. It was a loan document. A very simple, very basic loan document that his buddy from law school had drawn up for free. No equity. No ownership stake. Just a loan. With a clause for repayment. And Marcus, brilliant Marcus, had been planning that from the very beginning. Asterisk, when we returned from our honeymoon. Things moved fast. Marcus quit his job immediately. He rented office space in the West Loop, hired his first 2 employees, both friends from business school, and incorporated Reynolds Logistics Solutions. I kept my job as a grants manager at a nonprofit. Someone had to pay the bills while Marcus built his dream, and I was happy to do it. My salary covered our modest apartment, groceries, utilities. All $5 million of Grandma Rose's money went into the business. Every single dollar. The first 2 years were brutal. Marcus worked 18-hour days. He slept at the office more than he slept at home. I'd bring him dinner and find him hunched over spreadsheets. Phone pressed to his ear, negotiating with potential clients. Baby, you need to rest, I'd say. I will. Soon. Once we land the Sterling contract, everything changes. The Sterling contract was his white whale, a massive logistics deal with a Fortune 500 company. If he got it, Reynolds Logistics would be legitimate. If he didn't, we'd have burned through $3 million with nothing to show for it. I held my breath for 6 months. Then one night, Marcus burst through our apartment door at 11 p.m., screaming, "We got IT. Naomi, we got Sterling." He picked me up and spun me around our tiny living room. We danced, we cried, we celebrated. That contract saved everything. Within a year, Reynolds Logistics had doubled in size. Within 3 years, they had offices in 4 cities. Within 5 years, Marcus was being featured in Crain's Chicago business as one of the city's most promising young entrepreneurs. I watched it all happen with pride swelling in my chest. Look at what we built. Look at what my husband accomplished. Look at what my grandmother's money made possible. Year 6. Marcus moved us out of our apartment and into a beautiful Victorian in Lincoln Park. 3 bedrooms. Original hardwood floors. A backyard garden that reminded me of Grandma Rose's. It cost $1.2 million. Can we afford this? I asked, walking through the empty rooms. Babe, the company did $11 million in revenue last year. Yes, we can afford this. He didn't mention that my initial $5 million had grown to $20 million in company valuation. He didn't mention that I had no ownership stake. Because I never asked, I trusted him completely. Year 8. He started traveling more. New York, Los Angeles, London. Building partnerships. He'd explain, "This is how you scale." I stayed home, tending to my nonprofit job, which I loved. I had been promoted to director of development. I was good at my work. I found meaning in it. Marcus and I grew distant, but I told myself it was normal. He was building an empire. I was supporting that empire. This was a sacrifice that came with success. Year 9. He came home one evening with champagne and an announcement. We just closed a Series B funding round. $25 million. My jaw dropped. Marcus, that's incredible. Company valuation is now $48 million, he said casually, popping the cork. $48 million. From my $5 million. In less than 10 years, so what does that mean for us? I asked. He handed me a glass. It means we made it, baby. Everything we dreamed about, it's real. That night, he handed me an envelope. Inside was a cashier's check for $5 million. What's this? I asked. Your loan. Paid in full. I told you I'd pay you back. I stared at the check. Something felt wrong, but I couldn't articulate what. He returned my money. That was good, right? That was what the agreement said. Thank you, I said quietly. Marcus kissed my forehead. Thank you, I couldn't have done any of this without you. But something in his tone felt dismissive. Final, like a debt being cleared so he could move on, I deposited the check. $5 million back in my account. Exactly what I'd given him, except the company that $5 million had built, worth $50 million. And I owned exactly 0% of it. Asterisk, I didn't realize I'd been played. Not yet, but I was about to. Because Marcus's ego had grown as large as his empire. And ego, as we all know, makes people careless. Asterisk, year 10. That's when everything shattered. It was a Tuesday morning. I was working from home, reviewing grant proposals, when Keisha video called me. Are you sitting down? She asked. I'm literally at my desk. Why? Check your email. I just forwarded you something. I opened my inbox. There was her email. Subject line, WTF is this? I clicked the link. Forbes magazine, digital edition. And there was Marcus. The article was titled, From Nothing to 50 Million. The Self-Made Empire of Marcus Reynolds. The photo showed Marcus in his office, a corner office with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Chicago River. He looked powerful, confident, successful. I started reading. Marcus Reynolds is the embodiment of the American dream, starting with absolutely nothing, no family money, no investor connections, no safety net. Reynolds built a logistics empire now valued at over $50 million. Through sheer determination and brilliant strategy. I had no advantages, Reynolds tells me, leaning back in his leather chair. I came from a working-class family. My parents couldn't help me financially. When I started Reynolds Logistics, I was sleeping on a friend's couch and eating ramen for dinner. Everything I built with my own two hands. I stopped reading. My vision to UNNELED. No family money. No investors. Built with his own two hands. The phone was still on video call. I could see Keisha's face, watching me process. Naomi, she started. He's lying, I said flatly. I know he's lying. That's why I sent it to you. Didn't you give him money to start that company? $5 million, I said. My voice sounded strange, distant, from my grandmother's inheritance. Keisha's eyes went wide. $5 million. And he's telling Forbes he started with nothing? I kept reading. The article went on to describe Marcus's bootstrap mentality, his self-made success, his refusal to take outside investment because he wanted to maintain complete control of his vision, complete control, because he owned 100%, because I owned 0%. There was a quote from him about sacrifice. I gave up everything to build this company. Relationships, sleep, social life, everything. But that's what it takes to succeed at this level. You have to be willing to sacrifice. AG gave up everything. He sacrificed. The article praised his solo founder status and his entirely self-funded origin story. I closed my laptop very carefully. If I hadn't been careful, I would have thrown it across the room. What are you going to do? Keisha asked. I don't know yet, I said. But he doesn't get away with this. That evening, Marcus came home late as usual. He was in a great mood, whistling as he walked through the door. Hey babe. He called out. Sorry I'm late. We were celebrating. Did you see the Forbes piece? I was sitting in the living room in the dark. I hadn't turned on any lights. I saw it, I said quietly. He flipped on the light, grinning. Isn't it incredible? Our PR team killed it. This is going to be huge for business. I'm already getting emails from you lied. His smile faltered. What? I stood up, holding my phone with the article still open. You told Forbes you started with nothing. That you were self-funded. That you had no family money, no investors. Marcus's expression shifted. Not guilty, annoyed. Naomi, that's how these stories work. It's about the narrative. People don't want to hear. $5 million, Marcus. $5 million from my grandmother. That's how you started Reynolds Logistics. He sighed like I was being difficult. That was a loan, which I paid back. With interest, technically, since the value appreciated. You paid back $5 million on a company now worth $50 million. So? He shrugged, actually shrugged. That's business, Naomi, you gave me a loan. I returned the principal. That's how loans work. I stared at him. You told the world you built this company with your own two hands. I did build it with my own two hands. You gave me capital, yes, but I did the work. I made the deals. I hired the team. I built the infrastructure. That was all me with my money. Marcus's face hardened. Money you chose to give me. Money I paid back in full. What exactly is your problem here? My problem is that you erased me from the story of your own success. You made me invisible. You wanted to be invisible. He shouted. You didn't want to be involved in the business. You kept your little nonprofit job. You were happy to stay in the background. Don't get mad now that the spotlight isn't on you. I felt like I'd been slapped. Little nonprofit job? I repeated slowly. Marcus rubbed his face. I didn't mean it like that. Yes, you did. You meant exactly that. My little job with my little salary that kept us afloat. While you played entrepreneur with my inheritance, I wasn't playing anything. I built a $50 million company. With my $5 million. We stood there, breathing hard, staring at each other across a distance that suddenly felt infinite. What do you want from me, Naomi? Marcus asked coldly. An apology? Fine. I'm sorry I didn't mention you in a magazine article. I'm sorry your feelings are hurt. Is that what you need to hear? What I need, I said, my voice deadly calm now, is for you to acknowledge that without my money, none of this exists. Not the company. Not the Forbes article. Not this house. None of it, Marcus laughed. A short, bitter sound. You really think that? You think money is all it takes? I know 100 people with money who couldn't build what I built. The money was just capital. I was the vision. I was the execution. I was the one who made it worth 50 million. Then you should have no problem giving me the equity I'm entitled to. His face went cold. You're not entitled to anything. We had an agreement. A legal agreement. You gave me a loan. I repaid it. That's the end of the transaction. That's the end of our marriage too, then. I said it without thinking. But the moment the words left my mouth, I knew they were true. Marcus stared at me for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. Maybe it is. He grabbed his keys and walked out. I stood in our beautiful living room, the one he bought with profits from the company my money built, and finally let myself cry. Asterisk, can I ask you something? If you were in Naomi's position right now, what would you do? Would you walk away with your 5 million and call it a loss? Or would you fight for what's rightfully yours? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I really want to know what you think. Because what Naomi does next is bold. It's calculated. And it's absolutely brilliant. Don't go anywhere. This story is just getting started. Asterisk, what Marcus didn't know, what his arrogance had blinded him to, was that Naomi wasn't just a grants manager at a nonprofit. She was a grants manager who understood contracts, equity, legal frameworks, and financial structures better than most lawyers. And she was about to use every single bit of that knowledge to take him apart. Asterisk, the next morning, I called in sick to work. I didn't trust myself to be around people. I was too angry, too heartbroken, too focused. I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop and started doing what I do best, research. I pulled up every document related to the money I'd given Marcus. The loan agreement his friend had drafted. The bank transfer records. The incorporation papers for Reynolds Logistics. I read that loan agreement for the first time with clear eyes. Really read it. It was shockingly simple. Almost suspiciously simple. 2 pages. It stated that Naomi Harrison was loaning Marcus Reynolds $5,000. 0 for business purposes, to be repaid in full within 10 years. No interest rate specified. No equity mentioned. No conversion rights, just a straight loan. But here's what jumped out at me, the date. The loan agreement was dated to weeks before our wedding. Before we were legally married. Which meant this wasn't a transaction between spouses, it was a transaction between 2 individuals. Which meant it could be challenged as a business investment rather than a personal loan. I called my friend, Jada, who was a corporate attorney at a big firm downtown. I need a referral. I told her, someone who specializes in business disputes, equity fights, forensic accounting. What's going on? Jada asked, concerned. I'm going to war with my husband. There was a pause. Then, I know exactly who you need. 2 days later, I was sitting in a sleek conference room on the 42nd floor of the Willis Tower. Across from 2 people who would change my life. The first was Patricia Chen, a litigation attorney who looked like she could kill you with a word and smile while doing it. Mid-50s, immaculate gray suit, sharp eyes behind designer glasses. The second was David Okonkwo, a forensic accountant whose reputation for finding hidden money was legendary in Chicago business circles. I told them everything. The inheritance, the loan, the Forbes article, Marcus's dismissal. When I finished, Patricia leaned back in her chair and smiled. Mrs. Reynolds, I'm going to ask you a very important question, and I need you to think carefully before you answer. Okay, what do you want out of this? Revenge, money? Recognition. Because those are 3 very different legal strategies. I thought about Grandma Rose, about her letter, about the 70 years she'd worked to build that 5 million, about how Marcus had taken it, built an empire with it, and then erased me from the story. I want what I'm owed, I said. I want the equity I should have had from the beginning. Patricia's smile widened. Then let's talk about founding capital and equity ownership. David opened his laptop. Mrs. Reynolds, I'm going to need access to every financial record you have. Every bank statement, every transfer record, every piece of paper that shows money flowing from you to the business. I have everything. I said, I've kept every document. Good. Now, here's what we're going to do, asterisk, for the next 3 weeks. I became a ghost. Marcus was traveling for business, which gave me time and space. I handed over 10 years of financial records to David, bank statements, tax returns, emails with Marcus discussing the business, text messages about money transfers. David worked his magic. What he found was damning. Double quotes, Mrs. Reynolds. He said during our 3rd meeting, your initial investment of $5 million represented 100% of the founding capital. For Reynolds Logistics Solutions, there were no other investors, no other capital contributions. Your husband contributed sweat equity, yes, but 0 cash. What does that mean legally? I asked. Patricia jumped in. It means that in a fair equity structure, you should have owned a significant percentage of the company from day one. The fact that you receive zero equity in exchange for 100% of the founding capital is, frankly, unconscionable. But I signed the loan agreement, I said. Doesn't that protect him? That agreement is poorly drafted, Patricia said, tapping the document with one perfectly manicured finger. It doesn't specify interest rates, repayment schedules, or what happens in case of default. More importantly, it doesn't explicitly state that this capital contribution was a loan rather than an investment. That ambiguity is going to be our friend. David pulled up a spreadsheet. Let's talk numbers. Your $5 million went into the company in 2014. By 2016, the company was valued at $20 million. By 2019, it was $48 million. Today, it's worth $52 million. He turned his laptop toward me. If you have received the industry standard equity for a founding investor, let's say 60%, since you provided 100% of the capital, your stake would currently be worth approximately $31 million. $31 million from my $5 million, and Marcus had given me back $5 million and called it even. But he paid me back, I said, needing to understand every angle. He returned the full $5 million. Doesn't that satisfy the loan? Patricia shook her head. Here's the beautiful part. He paid you back in 2023, which was within the 10-year window. But here's what he didn't account for. Nowhere in that loan agreement does it say that repayment extinguishes any potential equity claim, because the agreement never explicitly classified this as a non-convertible loan, meaning we can argue that your $5 million was always intended as an investment, not a loan. That the repayment was actually Marcus buying you out of your equity stake, but he only paid you the original value, not the current value of your stake. I sat back in my chair. So what do we do? Patricia smiled like a shark. We file suit for equity fraud and unjust enrichment. We demand either 45% equity in Reynolds Logistics Solutions, or we demand a buyout at current valuation. 45%. We're being slightly generous since he did contribute sweat equity. But Mrs. Reynolds, you provided 100% of founding capital. You're entitled to the majority of this company. David pulled up another spreadsheet. 45% of $52 million is $23.4 million. $23 million. My grandmother's $5 million, grown to its rightful value. What are the chances we win? I asked. Patricia looked at David. David looked at his spreadsheets. They both looked at me. With this evidence? Patricia said, I'd say 85%, maybe 90%. I took a deep breath. Then let's do it. Marcus was about to learn a lesson that every arrogant person eventually learns. Underestimating your opponent is the fastest way to lose everything. The lawsuit was filed on a Monday morning. Patricia's firm served the papers to Reynolds Logistics' office, to Marcus's personal attorney, and to Marcus himself via certified mail. I filed for legal separation the same day. Not divorce yet, just separation. I wanted Marcus to understand that this wasn't just a business dispute. This was everything. His lawyer called Patricia within 2 hours. My client would like to arrange a meeting to discuss settlement, the lawyer said. Tell your client to read the complaint first. Patricia replied. Then we'll talk. That evening, Marcus came home. I was ready for him. I'd moved his things into the guest room and changed the locks on our bedroom door. He looked haggard, furious, scared. Naomi, what the hell is this? He threw a stack of papers on the dining room table. The lawsuit. That's me claiming what I'm owed. You're suing me for 45% of my company. Our company. Built with my money. I paid you back. You paid back the loan, not the equity. Marcus's face went red. There was no equity. We had a loan agreement. A loan agreement so poorly written that it doesn't specify whether this was a loan or an investment, which means it's open to interpretation. And my interpretation, backed by one of the best business litigation attorneys in Chicago, is that I was always an investor, not a lender. This is insane. What's insane? I said calmly. Is you taking my entire inheritance, building an empire with it, and then telling the world you did it all yourself. I'm not giving you 45% of my company. Then you'll give me a buyout. $23.4 million. Current market value of a 45% stake. Marcus actually laughed. I don't have $23 million. Then I guess we're going to be business partners. He stared at me like he'd never seen me before. Maybe he hadn't. Maybe he'd never actually looked. This will destroy the company, he said quietly. Investors will pull out. Clients will get nervous. The board will panic, then settle with me privately. Give me the equity I deserve. Put my name on the cap table where it should have been 10 years ago. I can't do that. Then you'll see me in court. I walked out of the room, leaving him standing there with his lawsuit papers, finally understanding that the woman he'd underestimated for a decade was about to take everything. Asterisk, I want to pause here and ask you something. Do you think Naomi is being fair? Some people might say she should have known what she was signing 10 years ago. Some might say love means supporting your partner without expecting anything in return. But I want to know what you think. Is she justified in this lawsuit? Drop a comment and let me know, because this case is about to get even more complicated. The depositions began 3 weeks later. Marcus's legal team tried everything. They called the lawsuit frivolous. They claimed I had been fully aware of the loan structure. They argued that repayment satisfied all obligations. But David's forensic analysis was airtight. During Marcus's deposition, Patricia destroyed him, Mr. Reynolds. When you received the initial $5 million from Mrs. Reynolds in 2014, what percentage of Reynolds Logistics did you own? 100%. And what percentage did Mrs. Reynolds own? 0%. It was a loan, not yes or no, please. Did Mrs. Reynolds own any equity in the company she fully funded? No. Did you ever offer her equity in exchange for her capital contribution? It wasn't a capital contribution. It was a yes or no, Mr. Reynolds. A pause. No. Did you ever discuss with Mrs. Reynolds the possibility of her being a co-founder? We discussed yes or no. Double quotes. No. Did you tell Forbes magazine that you started your company with absolutely nothing? Marcus's lawyer jumped in. That's a mischaracterization. I'm reading from the article, Counselor Mr. Reynolds. Yes or no? Did you tell Forbes you started with nothing? The interviewer asked about family money and investors. Yes or nitrogen monoxide? Yes, I said that. Despite receiving $5 million from your then-fiancé. That was a personal loan, not. Move to strike the non-responsive answer, Your Honor. Please instruct the witness to answer yes or no. The deposition went on for 6 hours. By the end, Marcus looked destroyed. David had also found something else, something Patricia called the smoking gun. In 2016, 2 years after I'd given Marcus the money, Reynolds Logistics had brought on a small angel investor for $500,000 in exchange for 8% equity. $500,000 equals 8% equity. My $5 million equals 0% equity. The math was damning. If we apply the same valuation formula, David explained to the court mediator, Mrs. Reynolds' $5 million should have entitled her to approximately 60 to 65% equity. We're only asking for 45% to account for Mr. Reynolds' sweat equity contribution. The mediator looked up Marcus's lawyer. Counselor, your client is in a very difficult position here. Marcus's lawyer knew it. They requested a recess to discuss settlement. The settlement negotiations took place in a neutral conference room. Marcus, his lawyer, his CFO, me, Patricia, David. Marcus looked like he hadn't slept in days. His lawyer opened. My client is willing to offer Mrs. Reynolds a one-time payment of $8 million to settle all claims and dismiss the lawsuit. I almost laughed. Patricia did laugh. $8 million? Your client's company is worth $52 million. My client is entitled to 45%. That's $23 million. Your offer is insulting. My client doesn't have $23 million in liquid assets. Then he'll restructure his equity. 45% ownership, voting rights, board seat. Everything a founding investor deserves. Marcus finally spoke. His voice was hoarse. If you take 45%, I lose control of my own company. It was never just your company. Marcus, it was always ours. You just convinced yourself otherwise. His CFO jumped in. Mrs. Reynolds, I've reviewed the numbers. The company can afford a buyout of $15 million. That's her final offer, $15 million. I looked at Patricia. She shook her head slightly. We could get more. But something in me shifted. I thought about Grandma Rose, about her letter, about what she'd actually wanted me to do with this money. I don't want the buyout, I said quietly. Everyone looked at me. Patricia frowned. Naomi, I want the equity, 45% ownership, voting rights, board seat, everything. Marcus's face went white. You'll destroy the company. The board will revolt. The investors will see that the company finally has proper governance, that the person who funded its existence finally has a say in its future. I leaned forward. Marcus, you built something incredible with my money, but you built it recklessly. I've seen the financials. You're over-leveraged. You expanded too fast. You're burning through cash to maintain an image instead of building sustainable growth. His jaw clenched. You don't know anything about running I know about sustainable growth. I've been managing an $8 million nonprofit budget for 5 years. I know about fiduciary responsibility. I know about stakeholder management. And I know that this company needs adult supervision. Before you run it into the ground chasing Forbes covers and fancy offices, silence. His lawyer whispered something to him. Marcus shook his head. More whispering. Marcus's face was red, but he was listening. Finally, his lawyer spoke. My client agrees to the equity distribution. 45% to Mrs. Reynolds, 55% retained by Mr. Reynolds. However, he requests a vesting schedule. No vesting, Patricia interrupted. Full equity immediately. This isn't a grant, this is recognition of founding capital. Fine. But my client maintains CEO position and operational control with board oversight, I said. Which includes me as a board member with full voting rights. Marcus looked at me with something between hatred and fear and maybe, just maybe, respect. Do we have a deal? Patricia asked. Marcus's lawyer looked at his client. Marcus stared at me for a long moment. Then he nodded. We have a deal. Asterisk, they thought that would be the end of it. Sign the papers, restructure the equity, move on. But what? None of them realized, not Marcus, not his lawyer, not even Patricia, was that I wasn't done. Getting my equity was just the beginning. Because once I had access to the company's books, I found something that changed everything. Asterisk, the equity transfer was finalized on a Friday. By Monday morning, I had full access to Reynolds Logistics' financial systems, board materials, and strategic documents. I spent that entire week reading every board deck, every financial statement, every strategic plan. What I found was worse than I'd imagined. Marcus had built an empire, yes, but it was an empire on the verge of collapse. He'd taken on $8 million in debt to finance the flashy West Loop office expansion. He'd overpaid for acquisitions that weren't performing. He'd hired a bloated executive team, 6 VPs making $300,000 plus each. Most of them his fraternity brothers with no real logistics experience. The company's revenue was $47 million annually, but expenses were $44 million. They were barely profitable. And there was one more thing. A majority of the company's revenue came from a single client. The Sterling contract. That had saved Marcus a year or two. That contract was up for renewal and for months. If Sterling walked, Reynolds Logistics would collapse. I brought all of this to the next board meeting. There were 5 board members, Marcus, his CFO, to angel investors from 2016, and now me. Asterisk, I arrived with a 50-page analysis prepared by David. Gentlemen, I said, distributing the packets, we have a serious problem. I walked them through everything, the debt, the bloated payroll, the revenue concentration risk, the Sterling renewal. Marcus tried to interrupt twice. I shut him down. The question before this board, I concluded, is whether we want to run this company for sustainable long-term growth, or whether we want to continue the current strategy of smoke and mirrors until we inevitably collapse. One of the angel investors, a man named Thomas Chen, spoke up. What do you propose? Restructuring? Immediately, we cut executive overhead by 40%. We renegotiate the office lease or sublease half the space. We use the cash flow to pay down debt and diversify our client base so we're not dependent on Sterling. That's insane, Marcus said. We need that executive team. We need the office to maintain our brand. Our brand is worth nothing if we go bankrupt. I said flatly, Thomas, what does our cash runway look like if Sterling doesn't renew? Thomas, who was a former CFO, himself, checked his notes. For months, maybe 5 if we're lucky, the room went silent. The other angel investor, Maria Rodriguez, looked at Marcus. Did you know about the Sterling renewal risk? Marcus shifted. I'm handling the renewal. It's under control. That's not what I asked. Did you know we're 4 months from bankruptcy if Sterling walks? I was managing it. Yes, or nitrogen monoxide? Marcus, he swallowed. Yes, Maria turned to me. Mrs. Reynolds, I vote for your restructuring plan. Thomas nodded. I second that vote. The CFO looked at Marcus, then at the numbers, then at me. I vote yes as well. Marcus stared at all of them. You're voting to destroy everything I built. We're voting to save it. Maria interrupted. Naomi, you have the board's support. What do you need from us? I need executive authority to implement the restructuring, and I need Marcus to step back from day-to-day operations for 90 days. While I stabilize the company, Marcus shot to his feet. Absolutely not. This is my company. It's your company. I said quietly, you have 55%. I have 45%. But I have 3 board votes to your 1, and right now, this board doesn't trust your judgment. His face went purple. I'm the CEO. You're still the CEO, Maria said. But you're on a 90-day performance improvement plan. Either you accept Naomi's oversight, or we vote to remove you entirely and install her as CEO. I saw the moment Marcus realized he lost. He sat down slowly. Fine, asterisk. The next 90 days were brutal. I fired 4 of the 6 overpaid VPs. I renegotiated the office lease, subleasing an entire floor. I personally flew to Sterling's headquarters and spent 2 days with their crew, understanding their concerns, addressing their issues, and ultimately securing a 3-year contract renewal at better terms than before. I cut $12 million from annual expenses while improving operational efficiency. The company started Breathing again, Marcus watched it all happen from the sidelines. He fought me at first passive-aggressive emails, undermining comments to staff. But when the team saw the results, they started coming to me instead of him. By day 60. Even Marcus had to admit it was working. By day 90. The company had $6 million in cash reserves instead of being 4 months from bankruptcy. The board meeting at the end of the restructuring period was short. I move that we appoint Naomi Reynolds as co-CEO. Thomas said. Seconded. Maria said. Marcus didn't even fight it. He knew he'd lost the board's confidence. All in favor? For hands went up, Marcus's hand stayed down, motion pauses. Naomi, congratulations. You're officially co-CEO of Reynolds Logistics Solutions. I looked at Marcus across the table. He looked 10 years older than he had 3 months ago. I'll need your cooperation, I said quietly. He just nodded. Can I tell you something? This is a moment that makes people uncomfortable. Because Naomi didn't just get her equity back. She didn't just get her money. She took control. And I know some of you might be thinking, isn't that going too far? But I want you to ask yourself, why do we think it's too far? When a woman takes power in a company she funded, would we say the same if Marcus had done this to a male business partner? Drop your honest thoughts in the comments. I really want to hear from you on this one. 1 year later, Reynolds Logistics Solutions was thriving. Revenue, $63 million. Profit margin, 22%. Client diversification. Sterling was now only 35% of revenue instead of 60%. Company valuation, $89 million. My 45% was worth $40 million. From Grandma Rose's $5 million. The board voted unanimously to restructure executive compensation. Marcus and I would both receive $400,000 annual salaries as co-CEOs. Equal, fair. It was awkward at first, sharing leadership with the man who'd betrayed me. But over time, we found a rhythm. He handled client relationships and business development. He was still brilliant at that. I handled operations, finance, and strategic planning. We barely spoke outside of work. Our marriage was effectively over, though we hadn't finalized the divorce. Neither of us had the energy to fight about it anymore. One afternoon, 2 years into the restructuring, Marcus knocked on my office door. You have a minute? I looked up from my laptop. Sure. He sat down across from me. He looked different now, older, yes, but also more grounded. The arrogance was gone. What was left looked almost humble. I owe you an apology, he said. I waited. I was wrong. About everything. The way I treated you, the way I treated your money, the way I erased you from the company story. It was cruel. It was ungrateful. And it almost destroyed everything. I studied his face, looking for manipulation. I didn't find it. You could have run this company into the ground in year 3, he continued. You saved it. You saved me, actually. Even though I didn't deserve it, I didn't save you, Marcus. I saved the company. And I saved my grandmother's legacy, he nodded. I know. But still. Thank you. And I'm sorry. We sat in silence for a moment. Are you happy? I asked suddenly. He looked surprised by the question. Happy? Yeah. Now that the Forbes covers don't matter anymore. Now that you're not the sole genius founder. Are you happy? Marcus thought about it. Happier than I was. I was miserable at the top, actually. Constantly performing. Constantly terrified of being exposed as a fraud. This? He gestured around, sharing the burden, sharing the credits. Hits better. Good, I said. And I meant it. He stood up to leave, then paused at the door. For what it's worth, you were always on my level, Naomi. I was just as stupid and insecure to see it. He left before I could respond. 3 years after the lawsuit, the board approached me with an opportunity. A private equity firm wanted to acquire Reynolds Logistics Solutions for $127 million. I owned 45%. Marcus owned 55%. My payout, $57 million. His payout, $70 million. The board left the decision to us. I met Marcus for coffee at a cafe near our office. What do you think? I asked. I think. He paused, stirring his coffee. I think we built something worth keeping. I was surprised. You don't want to sell, do you? I thought about it. About Grandma Rose, about her 70 years of building, about what she'd actually wanted me to do with her legacy. No, I said slowly. I don't think I do. Marcus smiled a real smile. Maybe the first genuine one I'd seen from him in years. Then let's tell them no, we did. 5 years after getting my equity back, Reynolds Logistics Solutions was valued at $180 million. I still owned 45%. Worth $81 million, Marcus and I had finalized our divorce 3 years prior. It was amicable. We split the house 50-50, divided our personal assets fairly, and remained business partners. He eventually remarried to someone he met at a logistics conference. She was kind, brilliant, and called him on his bullshit. I liked her. I dated casually but didn't remarry. I didn't need to. I have found something better than romance. I have found my power. The company thrived. We opened offices in 6 countries. We hired 300 employees. We were named one of Chicago's best places to work 3 years running. And I made sure every single employee knew the company's real origin story. At our annual company meeting, I told it myself, Reynolds Logistics Solutions was founded on a $5 million investment from my grandmother, Rose Harrison. She was a Black woman who worked her entire life as a teacher and saved every penny. Her dream was that her money would build something lasting, something meaningful. And it has. Marcus sat in the audience listening. When I finished, he started clapping. The entire company joined. Later, someone asked for a photo of Grandma Rose. I had one enlarged and mounted in our lobby under her photo. A plaque, Rose Harrison, 1925 to 2014, the true founder of Reynolds Logistics Solutions. Marcus helped me hang it. She would have liked you, I told him. Eventually, he laughed. Eventually is generous. Last month, Forbes called again. They wanted to do a follow-up piece, The Untold Story of Reynolds Logistics, how Naomi Reynolds saved a $50 million company from collapse. The reporter asked me about the original article, the one that had called Marcus self-made. Were you angry when you saw that? She asked. Angry doesn't cover it, I said honestly. But that anger became fuel. It pushed me to fight for what I deserved. And ultimately, it made me a better leader. Do you regret giving your ex-husband that money? I thought about it carefully. I regret trusting him to do the right thing without protecting myself legally. But I don't regret the investment. That $5 million grew into something that's changed hundreds of lives. Our employees, their families, the communities we serve. My grandmother's money built something lasting. That's all she wanted. And your relationship with Marcus now? We're business partners. We're friendly. We both learned hard lessons about ego, about fairness, about respect. We're better people for it. The article ran last week. The headline, From Invisible to Invaluable, how Naomi Reynolds claimed her place in the company she built this time. The story was true. So let me ask you, what did you think of this journey? Naomi started as someone who trusted completely, gave everything, and expected nothing in return. She ended as someone who demanded what she deserved and fought for it brilliantly. Some people might say she was vindictive. Others might say she was just. I want to know what you think. Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if this story resonated with you, hit that like button and subscribe, because I have so many more stories about people who refuse to stay invisible. Remember, your contributions matter. Your sacrifices matter. And you are never obligated to make yourself small so someone else can feel big. Protect yourself. Know your worth. And if someone tries to erase you from your own story, rewrite it yourself. Thank you for being here with me today. I'll see you in the next story.